What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Football Forecast, episode 4. Today is Tuesday, August 13th, 2019. We are a week away from the college football season. Next Saturday is the first college game day, so we're looking pretty forward to it. We're all getting ready, and everybody's kind of excited in the household. We're ready, and yeah, I know everybody watching Football Forecast is ready. And, it's definitely a time to celebrate. It's like Christmas for us, the first college game day. So, yeah, I'm excited. And before, even the season starts, we do have a bit to talk about. A lot has happened, really, in the past week. Gave us a lot to talk about today. I guess first, the biggest thing that everybody's talking about in the college football world that we should, talk about is the Tate Martell situation. So, if you're unfamiliar and you're watching tonight and you don't know about that situation, well, Tate Martell was a QB who lost his job at Ohio State. He transferred to Miami. And, everybody thought he was going to be the starter at Miami, have a chance to play in Miami after he didn't win the job in Ohio State because he looked like a good QB. He was a guy that, people said could win the job and happened to be beat out by the other young QBs at Ohio State. Well, they came to Miami, and he was supposed to play this year, but he has officially lost a job again to backup Jarren Williams, who has only completed one pass his entire career. So that's caused a lot of talk early this week. Some people are speculating, his future, and some reports even suggest he may be considering moving to a slot receiver position. So there are a lot of speculations, a lot of, accusations around Tate Martell, saying like what is he gonna do, and considering his future and things like that. But what do you think is in Tate Martell's future after this?
I don't know. Usually, guys who are quarterbacks are usually pretty set on being quarterbacks, particularly once they get to the college level. Occasionally, you'll get guys who, if they can see that they're not going to get on the field at that position, they are willing to make a move just so they can get on the field and play. But a lot of quarterbacks are usually not willing to do that. I would not be surprised if maybe at some point before the end of this year, you may see his name in the transfer portal again. He transferred from Ohio State to Miami before they even completed a spring practice there. So he, before he even had a chance to even compete for the job with Justin Fields, he decides to, instead of doing that, just up and transfer. So apparently he is going through spring practice at Miami. He's competing here in fall camp now, and it looks like you said, that Jarren Williams is going to be the starter, at least to begin. And, of course, you got another quarterback there, N'Kosi Perry, who started some for the Hurricanes last year. But, we'll just have to see how it plays out. Who knows? He may, get a chance to be a starter if Jarren Williams doesn't work out, or in case there might be an injury or whatever. But, he's part of a growing trend. These guys, particularly quarterbacks, if they see they're not going to be able to get on the field where they're at, they're more than willing to try to transfer somewhere where they can. So he's transferred once. I wouldn't be surprised if it happens again. So we'll just have to see how that plays out.
Yeah, like you said, he's one of these quarterbacks that seems dead set on playing quarterback. I don't think he is going to express any interest in, playing a slot wide receiver position, and nobody has said that he expresses any interest in it. It's just the fact that they're saying that's an option for him. So as for his options, I think most people see at this point that he's probably more than likely going to be able to play at some point in the season if he stays in Miami. With Jarren Williams, only completing one pass, there's going to be times where he's going to be able to enter, and coaches are going to put Martell in. But I think for Martell, after what he did at Ohio State when he left to come to Miami, I think this is just a trend for him, himself. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him transfer again. And that would set a very bad example for a lot of these guys that got to compete for their job. And it's like the thing with Jalen Hurts. It's like a story of why you shouldn't transfer, why you should always compete, and none of these guys are taking it to heart. All these guys are kind of turning their nose up at that story, and a lot of other stories, and so nobody really knows where he's gonna go from here. But I could probably say he's going to transfer again. I mean, I would say that if he stayed, he'll have a chance, but I just don't see him staying. I just don't see him, not having the starting job and staying there.
Yeah, probably not. And this is also a trend, especially among, like I said, the quarterback position. And also, if you notice, if you look at some of the quarterbacks recently, say in the last year or so, who have transferred to schools, um, even the school they transfer to, they still don't end up being a starting quarterback. They're still a backup. So a lot of times when these kids transfer, sometimes there's underlying issues or performance issues. I mean, there's a reason why they weren't starting where they were at. Jalen Hurts is kind of the exception to that rule. Um, Alabama just happened to have two very good quarterbacks, and they simply just had to make a choice on who they were going to play. Um, and coincidentally, Jalen Hurts at Oklahoma now, Lincoln Riley still has not named him the starting quarterback. So apparently there is still a quarterback battle ongoing there. I think most people would anticipate Jalen Hurts being the starter, but they haven't named him yet. Ironically, the quarterback who caused Tate Martell to transfer, Justin Fields, who of course transferred to Ohio State from Georgia, also has not yet been named the starting quarterback there. So apparently there is still a battle ongoing there as well. But and there are several other schools where we still have quarterback battles ongoing. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on as we get closer to the beginning of the season. And of course, college coaches are notoriously secretive, particularly about things such as naming starting quarterbacks. So some of these guys we may not know the situation until they actually suit up and get ready to kick off for the first game.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a lot of coaches are very secretive about that, and I think we all know, Riley is going to name Jalen Hurts a starter for Oklahoma, and I don't know what's going on in Ohio State. But with Justin Fields, he's gotten a lot of chances, so I would hope he's, the starter this year. I would hope he, manages his way to that. But, this has just created a culture of just transfers and, just non-competitions in the country for, players that want to go out and play quarterback. And, we really don't see this with any other positions, because there's only one quarterback, but it's starting to happen with running backs a little bit. You're starting to see it now, probably more this year than any other year. We have, guys like Kendall Milton, and you see, running backs that are going to, thinking about committing to Alabama now with the Trey Sanders injury that I'm going to talk about later. And, I mean, this kind of culture creates just a non-competitive, vibe in between, players and coaches, in the way that, they talk to each other, and, the way that, these guys have to perform in college to get to the NFL. It just creates a culture of, non-competitive players. So, like I said, it's being seen now in running backs. I think, it's still going to exist more prevalently in quarterbacks. As a running back, I feel that situation is not as pressed, because I feel that a running back is less likely to leave, and I feel that they're pretty dead set on wherever they want to commit, really. But the quarterback situation is almost out of hand. I mean, it's getting ridiculous. It's like free agency almost, without any money. So, not sure what we're going to see out of all this. That's one thing I am pretty excited for the season to start for, to see, how this all ends up, how the transfers end up. And, hopefully, some of these transfers may set an example and say, like, hey, well, you got to play it safe if you want to, be this way. If you want to, have a starting job, you got to play it safe and do it this way. And hopefully Jalen Hurts is able to set an example where it's like, I stayed at Alabama behind Tua for 2 years, and I was at a point where somebody is better than me, and I had to compete every single day, but I didn't leave. And at this point, exercising that that fifth year, being at Oklahoma, he's going to get his chance to be a starter and show everybody that he's actually, the competitor that he really is. Being stayed behind the best quarterback in the country for that long, or really just a year because he was ahead of him, the year before, regardless, that creates a competitive culture. That's the kind of stuff we want to see. But right now, that kind of narrative is not being spread around the country. So that Tate Martell story stirring up a lot of talk, this past week. And so I think that was a pretty great story to cover, first story of the night. So yeah, that's definitely something to talk about as the season progresses. So another narrative that's actually, getting me pretty hyped for the college football season is in the SEC. Georgia fans are now finally calling on Jake Fromm to lead them to a championship in this last campaign for him. It's the last campaign, and Jake Fromm's a guy that we've seen, almost beat Alabama a couple times. This guy has the skills to beat Alabama, and he has all the intangibles. He's a great quarterback. He's an NFL caliber type quarterback, and he's a guy with a lot of experience now. So one could say that he has a pretty decent shot at beating Alabama in the SEC championship this year, except when you look at the fact that he doesn't have something this year that he's had the past 2 years. He has no wide receiver core this year. No. His wide receiver core this year is incomparable to the ones that he's had the past 2 years. And so that's a narrative that I am going to love to watch this year. Another just narrative that I just pulled right out of the book is how much can Jake Fromm pull out of this adversity that he's never faced before. He has the experience now, but can he really stand up in the face of this much adversity and do this all by himself with these receivers that, are good, but arguably aren't as great as, the guys he's had before? This is McCole Hardman and guys like that.
Yeah, I mean, Georgia is going, particularly early part of the season, they're going to have to lean more on their running game. Georgia is, they're going to have one of the best, if not the best, offensive lines in the country. And they got plenty of good running backs. So they should have no problem running the football. They will have to have some success throwing it, to have some balance so people can't just simply key on the running game. I mean, they got some talent. They've got some guys, who have a chance to end up being good receivers. They just haven't played yet. And it may take a while for those guys to develop and get some experience as the season goes on before they can be possibly heavily counted on to be a significant portion of the offense. They do have a true freshman who actually is from Hoover, Alabama, George Pickens, 5-star receiver who apparently has been very impressive in their fall camp. So he's going to be a player to keep an eye on. They do have another kid, Demetrius Robertson, who actually started his career at Georgia. He transferred to Cal, and now he is transferred back to Georgia. But he is a kid who does have some experience, and he will probably figure in the passing game somewhat. You have another kid, Tyler Simmons, who's a senior, who's going to be their most experienced receiver, and he'll probably have a good bit of passes thrown his way, particularly early on as they develop some of their other receivers. So, but early on, I would expect Georgia probably to be a little bit more conservative offensively, and like I said, I think you'll see probably a run-heavy type offense at least probably until they get to the Notre Dame game.
And yeah, that's the kind of stuff that we expect to see from Georgia. We said a couple weeks ago, and I believe it was our first podcast, but that Georgia's just a physical team, probably the most physical, in the country, besides, Alabama, and teams of that nature. Obviously, they're probably the most physical when it comes to the line and when it comes to the ground game. They can ground and pound for real, and they've always been able to do that. That's just been a Georgia thing. They're just a physical team, relying on those linemen, running backs. On defense, you're relying on linebackers and tough tackling and stuff like that. So those guys are pretty physical over there in Georgia. And with wide receivers that are, I guess, average, nothing special this year, nothing like a McCole Hardman or somebody like that can kind of burn safeties every play and get over the top when you need them on play actions and things like that. I think Georgia can stand up in the face of that. It all just depends on the defenses that they play. And I think it also depends on the fact that, what are these receivers actually going to, look like? Because we haven't had much, film of them. We haven't been able to see many of these Georgia receivers, do their thing. Alabama, they got Jerry Jeudy now, Jalen Waddle, and Devontae Smith, who all of these guys are just, phenomenal. So this is going to be the best wide receiver core in the country. But when you look at Georgia, you haven't seen any of these guys before. You've seen, like a couple play here and there, but most of the time these guys were, sitting on the sidelines, not in on personnel. So it's going to be fun to watch. It's definitely going to be a challenge for Fromm to stand up and, take this team and kind of guide them in the right direction without having a beast wide receiver core. But honestly, they haven't really relied on a huge wide receiver core. Even when they had guys like Hardman, they didn't really rely on stuff that would, look like Tua or Trevor Lawrence, out there. Jake Fromm has mainly been a solid QB, so I'm thinking he can do it. I'm thinking he has a decent shot as he's had every year, especially with all his experience. It's just going to come down to that SEC championship game is what I'm saying. I'm going to say he's going to make it all the way there. It just comes down to that. Is he going to be able to, top most likely Alabama's defense, but we're not exactly sure yet, but most likely Alabama's defense. Is he going to be able to top that defense in that game, or at least put up some kind of points? Because in the past he's been able to, but he hasn't been able to slow him down at all. He hasn't been able to score quick enough. So that's going to be interesting. Jake Fromm's looking good this year. Last campaign, most likely. So yeah, that's an interesting narrative this year, I would say. If you have anything to add,
No, I mean you're right. I mean most everybody who looks at it is predicting Alabama and Georgia up in the SEC championship game. And there's two areas or an area that each team is going to have to improve on. We talked about Georgia with receivers. That's going to be their big deficiency. That's the area that they're going to have to develop some depth and some experience and get better in. That right now would be their weakest link. They're pretty solid everywhere else. For Alabama, surprisingly, you have to say that right now their weakest link is going to be their defense. I would say particularly in the front seven of the defense. They've had some injuries. We've talked about that. They lost Josh McMillan, who was projected to be a starting inside linebacker. He has been lost for the season. They had another defensive lineman, Stephon Wynn, who would be primarily a backup, but in a position where Alabama needs some depth. He apparently had surgery earlier this week, and he is out indefinitely. So we'll have to see if Alabama can develop some depth during the season. They got capable guys in the front seven. And they're plenty good enough with what they have. The question with them you worry about is going to be with depth and if they accumulate any other possible injuries along the way. You got Raekwon Davis on the defensive line. You got LeBron Ray, who is battling back from an injury. He hasn't practiced a lot during fall camp. I think he's getting about ready to come back and practice. So he should be a big contributor and probable starter. You got DJ Dale, who is going to be projected to be the starting defensive tackle on the inside. He's a true freshman. He is also coming back from injury and getting back ready to practice. And then you got some issues with inside linebacker where they're going to have to develop some depth and give some guys who haven't frankly played a great deal some experience. Secondary, Alabama should be in pretty good shape. They had a lot of guys who were kind of learning on the job last year, and guys who were having to fill in for other guys who were injured. They got Trevon Diggs back at cornerback. He should be one of the better cornerbacks in the country.
Surtain's back. Surtain.
Yeah, you got Patrick Surtain, who is going to end up being really good. He's just a sophomore. You got Xavier McKinney at safety, who I think is going to be Alabama's next big time safety. He should have a great year. and they've got good depth at all their secondary positions, so that's not an issue. The issue is that front seven, and like I said, they're going to have to develop some depth. If they can do that, Alabama has just as much chance of winning the national championship as anybody. And of course, I think everybody would agree probably at this point that Clemson is the team to beat. Clemson is probably the deepest team overall coming back. They don't really have any weak links, and they don't have a difficult schedule. So all that plays in their favor. But if Alabama is going to get back to the national championship game and have a chance to beat Clemson, they will have to get better in the defensive front seven. That would be the one thing that could possibly hold them back.
Yeah, they're going to be able to have to stop the run game, especially, which, seeing a beatdown like that in the national championship is, you wouldn't argue that running killed Alabama. I would argue the opposite. I would say that the fact that the secondary was inexperienced in that affair led to just many defensive just blown up plays where offense would completely demolish an Alabama defense, and I saw a lot of third down runs or big second down times where they needed to stop, third down especially where they needed to stop, but anybody could run through that line. That's something we're going to see more this year if they can't get that together. And that's the one thing that I said last year that just killed them. That's just one thing that it just frustrates the entire defense when you don't have a D line that can stuff that inside, like when you had Deron Payne, especially, probably one of the best in Alabama history at stuffing the run inside. And then when you're missing somebody like Joshua McMillan that can stuff the line, as the last line of defense. Luckily, we have Xavier McKinney back being as strong as a safety as he is, as a big and tough tackler as he is. He's able to fly with all the wide receivers, but he's still very, very strong as a DB. Luckily, we have him back as a line of defense to, get those tackles and get those big hits. But, Alabama as a whole, when you're looking at it from an Alabama standpoint, or if you were Nick Saban, you have to say, wow, we are really inexperienced or just kind of lacking in that kind of middle run stuffing scheme. So that's going to be something that Alabama's going to have to look out for. Yeah. Not really until they play somebody like Georgia, right. Or if they beat Georgia and go play Clemson. That's going to be another thing where we could see an exact replay of this year because of that just inside run stuffing. So
yeah, but there are two things that are going to be playing to Alabama's favor as we start the season. That will help the defense. Number one is Alabama is going to try to get back to a little bit more of a balanced offense, even though we've got Tua and we got all these good receivers. I think at times, it hurt the defense because they would score so quickly. Exactly. The defense spent more time on the field than they might have in the past. And I think because we did have a little bit of depth up front, depth issues up front, I think that hurt us. And I think at times we had a hard time getting other offenses off the field on third downs. So that hurt us. So hopefully if we can be a little bit better running the football and the more balanced offensively, that will help the defense. And number two, I think having an experienced secondary will help us.
Well, yeah, I mean that's something I've been saying, since we played, since Alabama played Georgia, and Tua beat them in overtime. It's even then there were passes going over top that shouldn't have been there, and we've always had the inexperience at Alabama, and now here come these guys that are all experienced. Yeah, Every single one of them is coming back.
That shouldn't be an issue this year. The thing that is going to be the issue for them, if they can do it, is they're going to have to be able to consistently put pressure on the quarterback. There are two things if a defense is going to be a really good defense, they have to be able to do. Number one is you got to be able to put pressure on the quarterback, and the other thing is you have to have a lockdown secondary. If you can do those two things, you're going to set yourself up to be in a position where you're going to be very successful.
And that's something I think, even with the lack of, if you have a defensive problem, this is a good one to have for Alabama. not having somebody that can stuff the run in the inside, not like lacking that part of the defensive scheme, because in the past Alabama's never really been totally, outside blitzing type schemes and things like that. We've always seen a pretty modest type defense, but now, like I said, with this, kind of smaller defensive line, and something that we're not really, hyping up too much because it's not, worth all the hype, and we're not seeing a great middle linebacker that can stuff those kind of runs and things like that. We're going to be looking at more schemes that are going to be able to get to quarterbacks, and we're going to see probably a faster defense. So that's something that is going to be fun to watch. Something that is going to look a little bit different this year. Honestly, if you look at all that, it seems like the Alabama defense could look pretty different this year. And that's something to watch. Very excited to see that secondary, though. Like I said, that's been a problem that I've seen for 2 years. Seeing passes blown up that go right over top, seeing blown coverages, and Alabama finally has 3 guys that are coming back that have actually been there before, that know exactly what they're doing, and all of them are NFL caliber. Every single one. Patrick Surtain, Xavier McKinney, literally all of them. So this is a secondary that's going to be one of the best in Alabama history. This one's going to be explosive. So this is something I'm very excited to see. And it should be enough to shut down big West Coast type spread offenses. Like you said, I think the weakest link for them is going to be that inside, running that ground and pound, and getting that inside pressure. Outside pressure should be fine, but that inside, run stuff and pressure is going to be something to.
But I think that we will have much more of a playmaking type defense.
Exactly.
Remember back in 2015 when our defense had all the knots, non-offensive touchdowns, interception returns for touchdowns, and of course, punt returns for touchdowns and all of that, block kicks and whatnot. I think that we have more playmaking ability on that end to put the offense on short field and create some of those returns for touchdowns like we did that year. Diggs, Patrick Surtain, Xavier McKinney, guys like Dylan Moses, Terrell Lewis, Anthony Jennings, all those guys, speed on the outside. Those all guys are playmakers who have that capability to create those kind of plays.
And every single one of those guys you listed, even the guys on the edge, those are guys that can drop into coverage. Those are some D linemen that we haven't really seen at Alabama. When we talk about D linemen at Alabama, we're usually talking about like Deron Payne, Quentin Williams, and guys like that. But this year we have guys on. Alabama has guys on the edge that can drop back into coverage if needed,
right.
And all kinds of things like that. Just very athletic playmaking type defense. So that's going to be awesome. I'm very excited to see that kind of defense from Alabama because it's something that like you said we haven't seen since 2015. A playmaking type, electric, hard hitting defense. So it's going to be fun to watch. Definitely excited for that football. First game against Duke, that's going to be very exciting, and I'm looking forward to it. Definitely, that's going to be a great narrative is to see that kind of defense try to rebound against that Clemson loss. Moving on, also in Alabama news, probably the most disappointing news I've had to report. We got this in the past week, but some unfortunate news that Trey Sanders, the running back at Alabama that came from IMG Academy, has been injured with it was some kind of foot injury, right? Did they say what kind it was, or did they?
They never said specifically. It says a foot injury.
A foot injury, okay.
So I'm not sure.
So Trey Sanders was a player that I was following, even right before his commitment to Alabama. A player that is pretty local to us. We're in the Tampa area, and Trey Sanders actually attended IMG Academy. So that was a pretty, I was pretty hyped when he committed to Alabama. And when he committed, not only did, he put the hat on and say that he's committing to Alabama, but he said he was going to win the Heisman his freshman year. And, he got a lot of talk for that. A lot of people making fun of him and stuff. But that's some, competitiveness that, Alabama needed at that time. And, people wanted to see that. Regardless if they made fun of him or not. That's a guy you want to see playing football. That's a guy you want to see running the ball. And, he was the number one running back in the country at the time. So this guy, went to Alabama, and this was probably going to be my number one favorite, player coming into this year. I was so excited to see what he does, especially in an Alabama offense that rotates, usually 3 backs throughout the games. I was ready to see Trey play. I was ready to see him, compete against the other backs and, Alabama's offense. But, unfortunately, he got that injury, and now we won't be able to see him for the entire season. So that is very, very unfortunate. Something that I know he's really upset about because he's a guy that really could have came out and competed with, Najee for the spot.
He was set to be an immediate contributor. He was running third team, but if he's as good as everybody says he is, and all indications was that he had been very impressive so far in fall camp. He could have ended up working his way into a very significant role, perhaps, maybe sharing carries with Najee Harris. Brian Robinson running second team. In all accounts, he's a very good back. He mostly has been kind of playing mop up duty the last couple of years. He's a junior this year, but I think the coaches were high on him, so I think he'll do a good job. And Alabama's got plenty of guys that can run the ball, but they're not all 5-stars. Najee Harris was a 5-star coming out of high school, and Trey Sanders is a 5-star as well. I think a lot of people were excited to see him. Looks like we'll have to wait till next year to do that, but if he is indeed going to be one of those guys that is going to compete for a Heisman Trophy, who knows? It could work out with an extra year on his belt, learning the system, getting comfortable with Alabama. It is likely if Najee Harris has a good year, he's probably going to go into the draft. So Trey Sanders could possibly come back next year and be Alabama's featured back. So
he definitely could. And I hope this is a situation where, number one, he's not going to degress from the injury. And really with the foot injury and running backs, you really don't see that a lot. Todd Gurley, had most infamous, injuries, going in the Super Bowl, obviously couldn't really contribute to the Rams, trying to beat the Patriots, but probably the best running back in the league last year and had a foot injury, and, he didn't really regress. And you see injuries like this all the time. You see it with Devontae Freeman. You even see wide receivers like Julio Jones have constant foot injuries. So this is probably a thing where I doubt we'll see him regress. And also, number two is the fact that if he comes back, he could definitely be, Alabama's starter. But I really hope it's not a situation where he doesn't, transfer. And I don't think he will, because he really likes Alabama and he wants to compete.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about that. I think he realizes he's in a pretty good situation where he is. And the good thing is it's a foot injury. That's unless this is an Achilles, and usually I would think if it's an Achilles, they would just come out and say it's an Achilles. Yeah. So apparently it's not that. So usually foot injuries are not things that guys have trouble overcoming. The good thing is it's not a knee or something that would be a much more serious issue. So hopefully he'll battle back from that. He'll rehab, get it even stronger maybe than it was before, and come back strong, and maybe he can, like I said, he can be that big back for us next year.
That's going to be a very great narrative to see. Even if he played this year, it would have been great. But now coming off this injury, nobody's even going to recognize his name when he comes back next year. Being somebody that is crazy, the number one back in the country, getting recruited, and now he's not, even going to touch the field this season. I'm gonna eat that up next year when he comes out on the first game and he's able to play, and he's running 400 on teams. And nobody was even expecting that because he's been out for an entire season. Nobody was planning for another feature Alabama back that's gonna be a Heisman Trophy winner. So this guy, he's not like a Derrick Henry. He's not like a Mark Ingram. He's like a Bo Jackson. This guy's like a Barry Sanders type guy. He can literally do it. He looks like Julio Jones. I mean, he's a running back that looks like Julio Jones. He has very little body fat. He's tall. He's strong. He can do it all. He can hurdle. He can spin. He can juke you. He can do all kinds of stuff. So it's a very premier running back that I'm so excited to see next year. Very, very just disappointed that he had that injury. I really wanted to see him. He's going to be my favorite player on the Alabama offense this year. But next year we'll see him. And this year, Najee, Brian Robinson, everybody on that Alabama offense will get the job done. Without Trey, would have been a nice addition this year, but they'll definitely get it done. So yeah, very unfortunate news from that perspective. Yeah, not a great way to start the first podcast before the football season, but yeah. So that's pretty much all my notes that I wrote down. What about you? Got any?
I have one thing I want to bring up in relation to college football. Saw a story earlier this afternoon. It looks like HBO is currently in negotiations with 4 different college football programs to do an access show. It would be something similar to the NFL show they have, Hard Knocks, where they really get in depth, show a lot of behind the scenes access, and do interviews with different players and whatnot. Apparently, there are 4 schools that they're considering doing the show with. One is Alabama. The others are Arizona State, Penn State, and Washington State. And so I found that very interesting. I can think some other schools that would maybe be coaches that might be a little more interesting. Then a couple of notes here. I can certainly see why they would focus on these 4 schools. Of course, Arizona State, you got a guy, Herm Edwards, who's the head coach. He's a guy who's has a lot of experience, used to be in front of the cameras, has a great personality. Kind of the guy that people would be interested in. So that would be I can see why they'd be considering them. And of course, Washington State, you got Mike Leach, who is one of the more odd characters in college football as far as coaches. He is known for saying a lot of odd, weird, or interesting things, however you want to put it. And so I think any of those schools would be interesting. I think there are some others that people would probably like to see considered as well. But I thought that was an interesting story. I'll be looking more forward to seeing how that turns out and see what school they do end up picking. Looking forward to that show coming on in the future.
Well, it kind of gets you wondering, what kind of show are they, looking for? I mean, obviously, it can't really, everybody's comparing it to Hard Knocks, for the fact that it's HBO, but obviously it can't really be a show where it's, like Hard Knocks or Last Chance U, where they're kind of discovering like a rags to riches if they're, looking at Alabama. So what do you think we're looking at?
I think it would probably be something along those lines. I think they would probably focus on the head coach, or maybe the head coach and maybe some of the top assistants, and they will probably pick some of the more interesting players or higher profile players on the team to focus on. That's pretty much what they do on these other shows. They're like that. So that's probably the way that would work out. And also too, and I can see why Saban would be interested in doing this, and Alabama would. You see Nick Saban on a lot of other shows, like on ESPN and stuff. He's always willing to grant access and insight on how Alabama runs their program, what they do, how it impacts the players on a daily basis, how they train, how they, drill into these players, the process, and getting both physically and mentally ready to play games, and also, teaching them how to do well in school, how to use the process and apply it towards just their different life situations, and to try to succeed in life beyond football. And Saban is always open, I think, to anything that would give Alabama more coverage and let people see what the program is all about, how they develop the players, and it's just it's a tool to market the program more or less. And Saban he's always doing interviews, and he is granted access to different shows, different reporters, and kind of showing a little bit on the inside of the program as far as how they operate. So I could see why he would be interested in doing this. And personally, I would like to see Alabama get chosen for that because I would personally love to see them featured on a show like this, but we'll just have to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I mean, seeing Alabama on that will be really interesting because the shows you see that are mainly on these football documentaries, such as Hard Knocks, they try to pick a team that's in a rebuild mode, like the Browns, the Bucks, and things like that. But even Last Chance U, showing these independents and East Mississippi community colleges that are not that great, and then a coach comes in and kind of makes them, is a rag to riches story. So seeing something like Alabama would be really different, and I think it would be really cool. On the contrary to probably how many people are thinking about it right now, I think many people think, I don't want to see many of those colleges since they're so successful. Why would we want to watch that? I think really we haven't really seen a documentary or an inside look at a program like that that's so successful. We haven't seen an inside look at, a kid that commits there, that's a 3-star or 4-star. He's always been, he hasn't been the richest kid, and then he walks in and, he sees the Alabama locker room with, their PS4s everywhere and, big, flat screen televisions and hot tubs and ice baths and all kinds of stuff and LEDs everywhere. And that's just a thing that, that would be interesting to see. Regardless if it's not, rags to riches, it'd be something where we can get an inside look at these D1 colleges that, these kids, it's a thing every year. Thousands of kids are going to these schools and a lot of them are playing football, and a lot of them are, living the life while they're playing and, having a fun time in college while they're playing football. And it's also, the process at Alabama, one of the hardest things you can go through, what Landon Collins said. He said he'd, rather be in the NFL 1,000 times than he'd rather be at Alabama again. But just because of how hard Nick Saban, works these players to be so successful as they are. So that's something that would be very cool. I think would be make a pretty good show. Especially if it was like a Josh Jacobs type thing, which obviously we're not going to see. But speaking of that, like Josh Jacobs is supposed to be having a movie directed about him. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you heard about that, but that's something along those lines.
I have heard something like that might be in the works.
Yeah, that would be that'd be pretty cool. I don't really know too much about his story. I know he slept in a car and stuff before he played at Alabama. And, yeah. Well, anyways, that would be a pretty good show. I think you don't really get to see that side of football much. You don't really get to see the pops and the wows. I think when people talk about college football, we talk about how hard it is for these players to go out and compete and then go home and do academics every day. To get their homework done and then wake up the next morning, go to weight training, practice, and all these things. But we don't really see, the pop factor of it. We don't really see, the wow, the glamorous side of it. And that's used to be all that was talked about. But, nowadays people like to be really pessimistic about it. So seeing a show like that would kind of celebrate the success and, the satisfaction of coaches while showing, that process, regardless of what school it is. Obviously, if they went to Alabama, they see a little bit more of the process than they were at any of these other schools because Alabama kind of focuses on that as their entire mantra. So if they did that route, that would be great. And even for fans that aren't even SEC fans, that would make a great show. Regardless, that would be very cool. I'm looking forward to seeing what route they go with that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right. What else do we have to cover today? Oh, yeah, we got the AB situation, the Antonio Brown situation. We didn't even talk about that. That should have been, the first thing we talked about. Well, so a couple things happened with AB since our last podcast. I think both of these things happened. Well, number one, he got a frostbite injury after our last podcast. Antonio Brown suffered a frostbite injury from his cryotherapy machine.
Right.
So
in France.
Yeah, in France. So that's a very weird story. Not sure how bad it's going to impact him, if it even is at all, at the moment. Which is not even the biggest story revolving around AB this week. So the second thing is AB this week. Obviously, if you're watching and you're a fan of football, you already know this because this was the biggest story this week. I mean, it was ridiculous. But Antonio Brown said that he would refuse to play if he couldn't wear his old helmet. that he's had since 2010 that is refused by the league. The league won't accept players wearing that helmet. They have to wear these new updated helmets. I'm not sure the exact model. I know that it is just the NFL standard helmet. And AB said he wasn't going to play this year if he didn't get to use his old helmet. And you had guys like Tom Brady, respond to him in different interviews. And you had a lot of players saying stuff. But, yeah, Tom Brady actually said that he agrees with Antonio Brown. He said that he likes his old helmet better as well. And he could see the fact, why he would want it, so you can turn better and, you use your head more to make those catches. But basically he said you got to do what you got to do. You got to follow what the league says. And, they're paying you, so you got to, do what they say. Guys like Julio Jones, Julio Jones was asked by a reporter, you got any problems with your helmet? And he said, no. He said, "Why? What's going on?" So you have a lot of kind of division in the league with that. Really, it just comes to Antonio Brown being ridiculous again, just notorious for being that ridiculous, NFL player. So, this is something that just was a very wacky story. And now, today or yesterday, we're seeing that they immediately shut down his case and that he is returning to the Raiders to play.
He actually returned to practice today, and also according to his agent, apparently they have found some suitable replacements for his helmet. Apparently, the issue is not with the type of helmet he has. It's just the fact that the helmet he has is 10 years old. And apparently the helmet you wear has to be under a certain number of years old, and it has to be a certain type of helmet to be certified. So apparently he has gone out. He's used social media to try to locate a similar helmet to what he has, just one that's a newer model than what he currently has. Apparently he has been able to do that. And they're in the process of apparently acquiring one of those helmets and getting, or however many he needs, and getting reconditioned and recertified. So apparently that is no longer an issue that's being taken care of, and his feet are apparently are healing from the therapy that he had in France. So now it's just a deal with trying to get him on the field and get him some reps and trying to get comfortable with the Raiders offense and comfortable with Derek Carr as his quarterback. And,
that is...
I just wonder if all that's going on, I mean, how successful can we expect AB to be this year?
That's the thing. I mean, if AB is not the best wide receiver in the league, does not have the most amount of... If he doesn't have 3,000 yards this year, I don't care if Josh Jacobs has 5,000 yards rushing. If Antonio Brown does not have 3,000 yards receiving this year, the world is going to tear him up. I mean, he is going to be absolutely ridiculed for all of this stuff that he's been just broadcasting to everybody. And, somebody even sent that in the Football Forecast Discord just a second ago before we started, the tweet that AB sent. He said, "I'm looking for a Shut Air Advantage adult large helmet that was manufactured in 2010 or after." So he's looking for a helmet that was made after the 10-year deadline. So that's absolutely ridiculous. It's just something that you would see in a little league kind of thing. It's just really funny, to me at least. So yeah, I don't know. Like I said, if AB doesn't have 3,000 yards receiving this year, I mean we're gonna have a problem.
Well, you just have to wonder: is this going to be the last of all the off-field distractions, or is this going to be an ongoing thing where, first it's a helmet, then it's an issue with his feet, and then it's something else, and it's something else. Is he going to get past this and settle down and just ball out and have a great year, or is this going to be just one distraction after another? And we're looking at a guy who, and this is a common thing you see in the NFL, where you have a guy who is with a certain team. He's been there for X number of years, had a very successful career, and they decide for whatever reason that they want to either force a trade to go to another team or go to another team as a free agent somewhere else, and all of a sudden they don't seem to do as well. The numbers aren't as good. Sometimes injuries are an issue. Is he going to be a guy who's going to be able to carry over his success from the Steelers to the Raiders, or are we going to start seeing him in a slow decline from what he was able to do in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I think it's going to be like an opposite Randy Moss situation. I mean, you saw Randy Moss play for like 32 different teams in his career. So, I mean, with Antonio Brown, it's probably going to be the same thing. He's going to play for all these teams. The difference is he's not going to be successful. I think his reign is over. I think he might be able to, pull off what he's done in Pittsburgh for this year if he quits acting, like this and quits doing all the stuff that he's doing. But I think, eventually he's going to wind up on another team and the team after that. And after that, he's just going to go downhill. I don't think it's going to be one of these stories where we see the best wide receiver of all time, Antonio Brown, plays for, six different teams and things like that. I think his reign is kind of over.
He's certainly expendable, though, because it's not like the Raiders had to give up a lot to get him. They only gave up a third and a fifth round pick. So it's not like they had to give up a first rounder or a couple of first rounders or anything like that. So, Gruden's the kind of guy, if he's not going to fit in and be productive and be part of that team, if he's not going to be the kind of player that they expect him to be, Gruden, I don't think will waste any time in trading him or getting rid of him. Because Gruden's not the kind of guy who's going to have patience with a lot of players, particularly ones who have caused issues. He's already unhappy with the what's going on around AB so far, and the fact that he has not been at practice and he's missing a lot of valuable time bonding and developing team chemistry. So, he's going to have to produce and have a good year, because if he doesn't, he could be, like you said, one of those players that could end up bouncing around from team to team.
Yeah.
You could say that maybe he was just better off staying where he was. He was comfortable there. That's the only team he had ever played for in the Steelers. He had a good quarterback. You knew he was going to be able to get him the ball and get him his touches and everything. Is he going to be able to get the same results playing in the Raiders offense in Oakland? So we will have to see.
And, rightfully so. I mean, because John Gruden is one of the best coaches, ever in the NFL. I mean, we see him, and he's a phenomenal coach. Even though I don't agree with his methods of the crazy stuff he does in the offseason, he is a great coach. One of the, he's an all-time great, and that's somebody we're going to see, for years to come as just, a football legend. So with Antonio Brown acting like this with Mike Tomlin, it's like, okay, we're going to have to get you off on a different team, right? But now he's on the Raiders, where he could easily, leave a lasting legacy. He's got Josh Jacobs. You got, every single first-round pick, on that defense. And you have a lot of talent, not to mention you have John Gruden. So I don't know. He could honestly leave a lasting impact if he wanted to, but it looks like he's going the same route he went on the Steelers. He's just going to act like this, and he's probably just going to spiral out of control. We don't really know yet. But yeah, all I have to say about that is I can't believe I spent so much time arguing with people that Julio Jones was a better receiver than Antonio Brown. I always knew I was right, but now it's like, you have people coming up to me. It's like, oh, yeah, you were right. Julio Jones is a better receiver. And, people should have, already acknowledged that in the first place. Julio Jones is not a diva. So, yeah, that's my stance on it. I just don't like what Antonio Brown does now. With all these antics. And it's just funny to me. Obviously, it doesn't, make me mad or anything. But it's just funny that a receiver is acting this way. Somebody that, people have called the greatest in the league is acting this way. It's just funny to me. It's kind of ridiculous.
And I think you have a lot of people, coaches, fans, media people alike, who have kind of tired of this. For a while, it was interesting, and this seems to be something that's more or less kind of limited to receivers and cornerbacks. They're kind of the divas of the NFL.
Yeah.
And you see more and more of this type of behavior out of those positional players, much more than in any other position. And I think it's got a point where I think a lot of people are tired of all the distractions they caused and all the off-field antics, even on-field antics in some cases, that these players cause. And, and of course, in the off season, you're going to have more that's going on, and in the fall and training camps, you have more that's going on. But hopefully when the season gets underway, hopefully we won't be seeing these underlying issues, and we can just kind of focus on football and the games.
Definitely, it's just something that we even talked about it 2 weeks ago when we were talking about the contracts. Is we hope we don't see a Le'Veon Bell situation this year with Zeke or something like that. We hope to see all these guys playing, and we hope to watch football this year, not watch Shark Tank with all these contracts. So it's gonna be interesting how everything plays out. I'm just excited for football, and mainly going back to school again and being, off on Saturdays, getting off on Friday and being reminded that, the next day is college football game day. That's awesome. Like that's getting to the point where I'm very excited for college football, especially. I'm definitely excited for the NFL too, but college football is going to be, amazing this year. It's going to be fun to watch, a lot of fun narratives. So I'm very excited for game day and things like that. And, yeah, it's going to be fun. Real quick, before we leave off, our fantasy football league is up currently. We need, I think it's 4 or 5 more players before Saturday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So if you're watching this or you see this recorded on YouTube, I will have the link I don't know. I want to put the link in the description, right? But I don't want random people to join and then not, play, if that makes any sense. I don't want random people to join the league and then not end up, playing and not drafting. So what I'll do is just leave a comment, right? I'll get a notification if you leave a comment. If you leave a comment with your YouTube account, I will see it. I will DM you, and I will get you in the league if you want to play. You have until Saturday at 7:30, so we need 4 or 5 people. If you're in the Discord and you want to play, just leave a comment, and I will get you in here. It's going to be fun. We're going to draft Saturday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and then we're going to play every week. And this is a year where we're actually all going to play. So this is going to be fun. A lot of good players to pick this year. Last year there wasn't that many, to get in the first round. It was really limited. But now, we got guys like Pat Mahomes, Saquon Barkley, you got Le'Veon Bell. I think I added a D lineman in there, so you got guys like Quentin Williams and Aaron Donald and stuff like that. So that's gonna be fun, and yeah.
Yeah, so. It's going to be fun. So if you're seriously interested in doing the fantasy leagues, please reach out to us and let us know. Like I said, we do need some additional players, and it's just it's just something fun to do. It's just something for entertainment purposes, but it's it's just something that just makes the game of football to at least to us more interesting, and so we hope that some of you will reach out to us, and if you need some help as far as deciding what players you might want to pick.
Or pick up from the waivers.
Or maybe some ideas on how you should go about drafting players. You got a lot of sites out there who have done some mock fantasy drafts, who have put out their fantasy rankings for different players. ESPN has just done that here in the last day or two. And there's other sites out there as well who have that information posted. But you can use those as a reference in trying to decide what your drafting strategy might be and what players you might want to target when it comes time to do your fantasy draft. And like I said, we do hope that some of you will reach out to us and participate with us on that, because it's just like something that we love to do, and it's just something fun. So we hope some of you will be interested as well.
Yeah, and if you have any basic questions or anything, if you're new to the sport, or even if you're not and you like watching the football forecast, you can go ahead and reach out to us with any question you might have, any advice you think you might want to draft. Obviously we're in the league too, but I'm not going to mislead you and tell you who not to draft. I'm obviously going to try to draft Pat Mahomes first pick, but I won't tell you not to draft if you have a pick ahead of me.
Yeah, don't draft Nathan Peterman.
Don't draft Nathan Peterman. I might draft Nathan Peterman. You see, with that 75-yard rush. I don't even remember how long it was. But Nathan Peterman looked like Mike Vick in the preseason game the other day. So I don't know. He's looking pretty hot out there. So we'll see. We'll see.
And don't draft Zeke Elliott unless they can get him in camp and get him ready for the first game.
Leave him on the waivers. And then when he gets a contract, somebody will pick him up. And you'll have to pay somebody $10 to take him from your team. So, yeah, I think that's pretty much it for today. this Tuesday. Like I said, we don't. I don't think we have any people watching live right now. I can't really tell. YouTube, we don't. Maybe on Twitch or Facebook. But on the recording, if you're watching this recorded podcast, biggest thing right now is make sure you share this podcast around. We don't really have a huge fan base right now. We're not growing either. I haven't made a point to market or promote football forecast yet. I've been, really busy with school and things like that, and just things that I have to do. But later in the year, once I get most of those things done, and even probably this weekend, I'm gonna do a lot more advertising and marketing, and I'm gonna get more people to kind of come in here and advertise for us and promote us. So if you like watching it and you like football, go ahead and share this to literally anybody, even people that don't like football. Mainly people that like football, so they come and watch. But even people that don't, go ahead and share this around. We need more people to come and watch because like I said, every week we want to build a community. So it's gonna be fun times. Go ahead and share, and always come watch.
Yeah, absolutely. If you heard us on the football forecast, please, whenever we're on, reach out to us. It just makes it more fun when we have people reach out and they have different questions or viewpoints or opinions on different things related to football, whatever it might be going on, or if it's related to a game or other issues. Because the more we can engage with people who are listening, to the more fun and more entertaining it's going to be. So and it's always good to be able to exchange different ideas and opinions. That's one reason why we do this football forecast podcast to begin with, because we just enjoy talking about football. So the more people we have to talk with it about, the more fun it is for us.
Yeah, and you can do that live because we stream on YouTube and Facebook now. I think Twitch is open, but I'm not sure if we have enough. I'm not sure if we even check it or we have the comments available right now. But on YouTube and Facebook, definitely we have those both open every time we stream. So this is live, and if you're watching the recording and you haven't watched this live, we stream every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So if you come watch us at that time until about 8, because we do it for usually an hour, then you can get in on the live chat and you can send us things on the live chat. And if you can't watch it live, then any comments you have, you can go ahead and drop in the comment box there. Obviously on Facebook, I don't leave those videos up because it's just a live stream. But on YouTube, when the live stream's over, we re-upload the podcast and make it a recording. So you guys can comment there or come watch us every Tuesday and talk to us in the live chat, and we'll get to you instantly because I have the chats open and I'm reading them back and forth. And biggest thing, just go promote us. Go, share it to everybody everybody that loves football, and get us some more viewers so we can build a huge community for you guys and have a fun community to talk about football with and just support everybody and things like that. So, that's going to be it for this Tuesday. Thank you guys so much for watching the Football Forecast episode 4. And, so next week, I guess we'll be talking about expectations going into College game day, and
we'll actually have some games to talk about.
Games, all right. Well, that'll be great.
Not many, but at least we'll actually have some games to talk about. Of course, a week from Saturday, Miami and Florida will be kicking off the college football season. So we'll get down and break that game down and see how we think that might play out and who who might possibly end up winning that. That's the main game that will be on that weekend. That's when we're talking about Saturday, the 24th of August. The following Thursday night is kind of like the big kickoff night. After that, that's Thursday the 29th. Have a lot more games that will be playing there. Clemson will be playing that night against Georgia Tech at home. Have other few interesting games as well that weekend, or that night, I should say. UCLA at Cincinnati. Be interesting to see if Chip Kelly's team is any better this year. UCF for our fans in Florida. Football fans in Florida, I should say, or UCF fans. They'll be playing Florida A&M that evening. So I'm sure that they'll be interested in that. You got Utah and BYU. Utah could be a surprise team in the Pac-12. And of course, BYU is their biggest rival, so it's interesting they're kicking off the season against them. Utah could be a very good team. They're starting the season ranked in the top 20, and that's going to be definitely a team that we should keep an eye on.
So yeah,
and there's some others as well, but we'll as we get closer to that date, we'll talk more about those games in depth.
Yeah, and Tuesday will be a big day to talk about games. So if you really want to hear about that, you're tired of hearing all these contract stories and things like that, Tuesday will definitely be a big college football day. Be describing all those college football games, what we're looking forward to. Probably bring you some really in detail, in-depth stats, in the depth chart and the schemes that they're going to be running. Miami and Florida especially, that's going to be a big one that we're talking about. So yeah, looking really forward to that. College football day is going to be on that day. I guess that's when we're going to really dive into it. So yeah, I guess that's it for this Tuesday. So thank you guys so much for coming and watching Football Forecast, and we will see you guys next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. See you.